Excellency Mr. Sensai Sipandon, Excellency Mr. Zander Shatter, Excellency Mr. Liu Huanjun, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to address the Russian audience right now, and I kindly ask you to greet all foreign guests. On my behalf, I would like to express my appreciation to foreign guests that came to us, that show interest in working with us, and they deemed it possible to spend their precious time. Russia, Vladivostok once again welcome participants and guests of the Eastern Economic Forum coming from over 70 countries of the world. This year, the forum is taking place for the 10th time already. Let me remind you that the idea to organize it was implemented at the beginning of the new stage for the development of the Russian Far East, at the beginning of the huge effort that seeks to create broad opportunities for citizens, the youth, primarily for the business, to fully unlock resource, industrial, logistical potential of the strategically important region of Russia, to increase the living standards of those who live here. Today's anniversary Eastern Economic Forum is not just an occasion to take stock of joint actions of authorities, businessmen, civil society, but also to outline future steps, our long-term plans in the Russian Far East, to enhance its role both in the Russian economy and in the international relations system, primarily in the dynamically developing Asia-Pacific. As you know, the development of the Russian Far East and Siberia was outlined as the national priority of Russia for the whole 21st century. It was stipulated in the address of the Federal Assembly in late 2013. Later on, we started shaping and updating the legal framework. We have launched the whole set of tools to support business, including advanced development territories, the regimes of the free port of Vladivostok, and the preferential regime on the Kuril Islands, the special administrative area in the Ruski Island. We have launched large-scale plans to strengthen transport, energy, utilities infrastructure. We made decisions to support housing construction, repair and building of social facilities, schools, kindergartens, clinics, hospitals, sports facilities. And these efforts are brought together in a great state program for the development of the Russian Far East. It outlines ambitious goals of advanced economic and technological growth, improving the prosperity of citizens of the Far Eastern regions of Russia. And these efforts yield expected results. Over the past years, on many key indicators, primarily economy-wise, the Russian Far East has ranked top, outpacing the national rate. For instance, over a decade, the gross regional product of the Russian Far East has increased by more than 2.5 times, from 4 trillion rubles to 11 trillion rubles. Over this period, the fixed capital of the Far Eastern companies and enterprises got 20 trillion rubles of investment, and a quarter of them was invested in the projects with state support in such areas as mining, industry, petrochemicals, construction, and so on. I would like to name the top regions for investment over the past decade. Yakutia, 4.5 trillion rubles. The Amur region, 4 trillion rubles. The Sakhalin region, 2.6 trillion rubles. They account for 55% of the whole investment in the Far Eastern Federal District. The dynamics of the investment in the Far Eastern regions is such that last year they doubled the figures from 10 years ago in real terms. For reference, in Russia overall it proved to be 1.5 times higher. It is also a good result, but still it is better in the Far East. Today, the Russian Far East gets double the investment per capita if we compare it with the national figures. What does it mean? It means that we're shaping not just a modern industrial base, but basically the new industrial map of the region. That's what it means. It already has and gets thousands of new growth hubs, including world-class enterprises such as the Baimsky mining and processing plant in Chukotka, the Udakan copper in the Baikal region, the gas processing plant and the gas chemical facility in the Amur region, the Nakhodka fertilizing plant, as well as the Zvezda shipbuilding complex in Primorye, hydrometallurgical plant in the Khabarovsky region, and other facilities. The growing business entrepreneur activities, expanding economic opportunities of the Russian Far East is the foundation for future development of the region. It is important to keep the sustainable momentum in traditional sectors in areas that are already on the rise. It is necessary to develop infrastructure logistic ties to ensure reliable supplies of affordable and clean energy and resources, of course. I would like to note that the mineral base of the Russian Far East and the mining in the region is expanding. The mining of coal and gold in the region over the past 10 years have increased by almost 1.7 times, including thanks to the subsoil licensing following an application. This principle allowed us to attract private investment more actively in the geological exploration to increase manifold the number of new field discoveries, including such large fields as the gold and copper deposit Lugakan in the Baikal region and gold and silver deposit Roman in Yakutia. I would like to specifically mention the rare and rare earth metals that are used in high-tech sectors in instrument engineering, nuclear engineering, radio electronics, and so on. Oftentimes, these resources are piling up in dumps during the exploration, including here in the Far East. And the system for accounting such stocks has been put in place. Once the technologies are developed, they can be extracted and used. I've talked about the relevant programs at St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. At the same time, we need to regularly take stock of such valuable components throughout the whole chain, including during the processing and export as components and as concentrates. Besides that, we need to introduce cutting-edge technologies to enrich ore of rare and rare earth metals and their processing, and to boost their demand inside Russia in new production facilities. 6 months ago, in February, we agreed to adopt a long-term plan for the development of rare earth industry. I asked the government of Russia to do that no later than November this year. Next point. On the eve of the plenary session, we had a meeting on the energy of the Russian Far East. I believe that many of you noted that. And clearly, with the development of economy and social sector, the need in energy in the region would only grow. And thus, we need to plan the commissioning of capacities in such a way so they would meet the growing demand of business, cities, and towns and cities. We are talking about the development of gas, modern coal generation, as well as nuclear generation, and certainly the use of huge potential of hydro energy. In the rivers of the Russian Far East, there already are and should be new hydropower plants. They generate green energy, and their construction requires modern engineering solutions, and our leading company, Roshydro, has such best practices. But clearly, to develop hydro energy, we need to have serious capital investment. The instructions have already been given, and I expect that the government and the colleagues in regions will continue to focus on the development of small and big hydropower plants. Let me highlight, in this case, we're not just talking about economy. Part and parcel for the development of hydro energy is the responsible water management, long-term flow management, flood prevention, It has a direct impact on environment, agriculture, and security of cities and towns. And certainly, the rivers of the Russian Far East are natural transport routes. They link territories, they ensure supplies of cities and towns within the northern delivery. In this regard, a separate issue is logistics. Over the past years, the load on transport system of the Far East has increased significantly. The region strengthens its ties with foreign countries, and this requires upgrading of car and railroad routes, expanding marine terminals, creating modern transport hubs with robotic warehouse and digital cargo processing. We'll continue to upgrade the Eastern Railway network, the Baikal-Amur Main Line and the Trans-Siberian Railway. In 2032, the throughput capacity should be increased to 270. Should be increased 2 times than we have in the beginning of this year. We are to further expand rail access to seaports. They are dynamically developing thanks to private investors. Over the past decade, the port capacity in the region have been doubled, and currently they amount to almost 380 million tons of cargo per year. In line with existing federal projects, the port capacities of the Russian Far East should increase to 2030 to 115 tons of cargo per year in addition. We have already built transport bridges to China, Nizhny Leninsk, Tunzan, and Blagoveshchensk. We also plan to build new bridges, including to the DPRK through the Tuman River. It should be opened next year. We need to actively develop transport and logistic hubs close to these bridges in order to use their capacities, throughput capabilities as much as possible. Besides that, we modernize border crossings. Such task has already been set, and it is interesting to implement it because it's not enough just to have one transport artery. We need to have the relevant logistics infrastructure. Let me also add that in each region of the Russian Far East, we modernize airports. They already service over 40 million passengers per year, including tourists that visit these picturesque sites more often. In this regard, I would like to note the WebRF initiatives and the development of 12 new master plans for the development of resorts in Sakhalin and Kamchatka. It would allow us to double the number of tourists over the next decade coming in these regions. I would like to note landmark events, for instance, the resuming of flights between Vladivostok and Pyongyang after the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the launch of a direct flights between the capitals of Russia and the DPRK. The flight via this route took place in late July, and a month before that, we resumed the running of through cars between Moscow and Pyongyang. I'm positive that these decisions will help bring our countries closer together and establish more solid ties. Certainly, especially important topic both for the Russian Far East and for our country, for the whole Eurasian continent, is the development of Trans-Arctic Transport Corridor. It goes from St. Petersburg via Murmansk, Arkhangelsk and Northern Sea route to Vladivostok. We see that there's a growing interest in this route, both from Russian companies working in the Arctic and foreign companies as well. And we're not just talking about single one-time transits, we're talking about shaping of a sustainable cargo base. We will develop the Trans-Arctic Corridor. We often talk about the Northern Sea route, but if you pay attention, I have mentioned the Trans-Arctic Corridor because we decided that we need to think bigger And we want this artery to operate together with all the territories adjacent to the Northern Sea route and with all the capacities. So this should be a comprehensive system. It should unite sea, railroad, motor transport. It would allow us to use the capacities of the largest rivers, such as Ob, Yenisei and Lena. Everything should work as one system. We are not simply to build reliable, safe maritime routes and ensure all-year operation of the Trans-Arctic corridor. We are to work on the coast as well. I'm talking about the development of communication and navigation, the vessel maintenance and emergency infrastructure, and certainly modernization of seaports in the Arctic and in the Russian Far East. By the way, yesterday we opened the multimodal complex Artyom here in the Primorsky region. It processes containers that are shipped from the Russian Far East to the Russian Far East, both from abroad and from the Russian regions. It should increase the efficiency of the northern delivery. It is crucial that such modern transport logistic hubs in our country to grow in numbers and to develop, to ensure that deliveries are faster and more efficient. And let me highlight that in such hubs, in logistics centers, it is important to use cutting-edge, including unmanned technologies. Next point, the Trans-Arctic corridor should benefit primarily the Russian economy and our regions of the Far East, Siberia and the Arctic. It should take into account the cooperation between them and open new business opportunities. Hence, I would like to highlight two important areas of development. First, the establishment of modern shipbuilding centers. They should produce the whole range of vessels working on this route, from tugboats and auxiliary ships to bulk carriers and ice-class LNG carriers, as well as ultra-powered icebreakers. And secondly, in order to increase the efficiency of the Trans-Arctic corridor, we need to establish new hubs. And I kindly ask the colleagues from the Maritime Board to assess these ideas, whether they are reasonable, and to give their proposals in this regard. Back in the day, good impetus for the economic growth and private initiative in the Russian Far East was given by new and cutting-edge initiatives for our countries. For instance, the Advanced Development Territories. I would like to remind you that the law on these territories was adopted in late 2014, and the mechanism was launched the next year, in 2015. The task was to ensure that the Russian Far East has truly globally competitive business conditions. That is why we developed these regimes, building upon best practices of business investment climate, including of the Asia-Pacific. What are the benefits provided by this mechanism today? Well, colleagues know about them, mainly. Nevertheless, for our guests, I would like to reiterate that. First of all, these are lowered insurance premiums rates. 7.6% for next year, for 10 years, the zero federal income tax for 5 years, reduced regional income tax. For the first 5 years, it would be 0 to 5% and 10% for the next 5 years. A preferential rate for mineral tax. Besides that, the advanced development territories provide for the free customs zone, as well as partial reimbursement of infrastructure costs and preferential business loans. Why am I talking in so much detail on the terms of the advanced development territories? They are unique for the business, not simply for our countries, but also for many other countries, for our colleagues and friends from other countries. The instrument has proved to be efficient. It allowed us to launch many investment projects and to systemically support businessmen and companies at the most important stage, at the construction stage, when the production is streamlined and when the full design capacity is reached. 18 territories were established in the Far East, where 300 residents are operating. They invested almost 4 trillion rubles of investment, creating 95,000 jobs. The government has repeatedly made decisions to expand the borders of specific advanced development territories to fit new projects. And given the accumulated successful experience, I suggest we make a drastic step. Seamlessly preserving terms for active investors to launch throughout the whole territory of the Russian Far East and Arctic the united preferential regime for business starting from January 1st, 2027. We're talking about making it easier to support businessmen, companies, and their new projects. In other words, no matter where investor comes, in any Russian Far Eastern or Arctic region, city or settlement, he will always have the right to benefits. Let me highlight, as we launch the united preferential regime, we will keep the terms for active investors in the advanced development territories. There should be no worries about possible changes. Namely, we're talking about residents of the international advanced development territories. This tool provides for more extended income tax benefits and the so-called grandfather clause. Everybody in the audience knows about that, but let me reiterate, we're talking about unchanged working conditions for 15 years, as well as tailored approach and dedicated support to every investor, including foreign companies. The legal framework is ready, and from the 1st of January 2026, international advanced development territories will be operating in the Baikal region, Amur region, Jewish Autonomous region, the Khabarovsk Krai, and Primorye region. We invite all those interested partners to benefit from this new opportunity. Getting back to the united preferential regime in the Far East, I would like to know the following. The specific sets of benefits, the specific modalities, time frame and sectors are yet to be determined by the government together with the colleagues in the far eastern regions of Russia. What is crucial there and what this decision should be focused on. Building upon achieved results in mining and processing industry, solid infrastructural basis, we need to launch the new stage for the development of the Russian Far East. We need to shape the economy of the future with drastic improvement of the living conditions in cities and settlements and training of highly skilled personnel, high-tech projects. That is the essence of the new stage, basically. We need to ensure that the territory of the Russian Far East is the territory that will see the development of high-tech projects. I believe that that is clear, but still we're talking about vast territories, not that much population. It has vast space and there's a lot of room for jobs, for the development. We have already launched national projects to ensure technological leadership of the country. And on the basis of each of these projects, I instruct the government to develop and approve the relevant program for the development of the Russian Far East and the Arctic. To have a technological leap, we need to have a bolder approach to regulation, to the legal framework of doing business. They should give a green light to innovation. They should boost the development of cutting-edge solutions and their introduction into pilot and large-scale production in social area and daily life. For instance, Sakhalin already has this pilot legal regime.
We need to enable rapid field testing of unmanned technologies. I would like to ask the government to create a wider application of these technologies on agricultural land, in nature conservation and management, in production and logistic platforms. We do not have threats here when develop these technologies here as we have in other condensed populated areas. For example, forest fires occur in vast territories, and we have the opportunity to react to these fires with the use of unmanned technologies. We have other opportunities on these vast territories of using modern technology. It is here where we need to use them, and it requires that the personnel be trained. And for the personnel to be trained, what is that we need to do? We need to create conditions for people to live here, to want to live here. We need to develop social area, cultural area, and so on. Otherwise, we won't have the personnel and we won't have the people who would develop these technologies. This is a complex task. It is obvious that such solutions will be required not only in Sakhalin but in other areas of the Far East, including in Amur region, in the Baikalye, in Chukotka region, and so on. In this regard, I consider it possible to extend this experimental legal regime for unmanned systems in all Far Eastern regions and expand it, first of all, for such areas as the use of digital platforms, artificial intelligence, and data turnover. In June, during the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, I spoke about the importance of the use of the benefits of electronic marketplaces. Within the experimental legal regime, I propose to use the national infrastructure of digital platforms for state and municipal procurement in the area of education. And what's more, the Far East should become the leading region of digital development of Russia, especially in the area of data turnover. With due regard to the requirements of privacy and security of such turnover, we are talking about this all the time. We will go back to this topic during the forum on artificial intelligence to take place by the end of this year. I hope that the government will prepare proposals for these systems. The next topic for development and adoption of technology to ensure timely production by 2030 in Russia will open at least 100 industrial, business and technological parks with the necessary platforms and communications. At least 10 of such parks are to be created in the Far East and in the Arctic regions of the country. I'm convinced that the modern infrastructure and opportunity will be in demand by the companies that are at the start of their projects or implement promising initiatives, including plan to manufacture products designed to substitute foreign equivalent, including construction materials, medical equipment, transport equipment, and so on. To stimulate the development of national production, we need to create wider conditions for wider use of the so-called offset contracts, when the investors invest in new factories, workshops, enterprises against guaranteed government orders. Also, it is important to develop the practice of offset contracts among the regions of Russia when the production is opened in one subject of the federation and the products under the guaranteed orders are supplied to several other regions. A separate issue with regard to the financing of innovative ideas and new technological projects. Here, the efforts of the state is important, but not only that, mostly the private investors attracting venture capital. A good example is a Vladivostok fund that supported about 40 companies in robotics, medicine, space technology. I would like to ask the colleagues from the government to carefully study the experience of this fund and to help scale up the work of this fund to support other projects of technological leadership of Russia. Please pay attention to this in the first as a priority. It is important to develop in the Far East the transparent, modern, efficient financial ecosystem. We already have the Eastern Exchange, the stock exchange center of the East. I propose to continue working on that and develop financial channels, regulatory bases, incentives for placing corporate shares. Dear colleagues, the development of the forest of the Arctic, building the economy of the future, should improve the well-being of people, increase their income, lead to structural changes in employment in favor of the skilled and well-paid jobs. This is the logic and the cross-cutting theme of the strategy that we are implementing in this region and all over the country. I would like to say once again, the economy of Russia should become a high-wage economy. And it's not nothing, it's not populism. There is an economic idea behind this. In the last 10 years, the average salary in the Far East increased 2.5 times, and by the results of the last year, it was more than 100,000 rubles per month. The unemployment level reduced from 72.5%. In all Far Eastern subjects of the Federation, the poverty level have declined. In most of them, it is still higher than the average in Russia, and we have something to work on here, but in general, the dynamics is good, it's positive. The general number for Russia from 2014 to 2024, the poverty level reduced from 11.3% to 7.2%. And among Far Eastern regions, the poverty level is lower than the average national average. In Sakhalin, it is 5.3%, Magadan 5.9%, in Chukotka region 4.4%. We remember that at the background of problems and hardships in the economy and social sphere in the end of the last century, people started to leave the Far East. It was a threatening tendency that was very hard to break. However, we are gradually succeeding. I would like to give us significant figures. From 2014, for over 5 years, the migration outflow in the Far East was 211,000 people. For the next 5 years, it reduced to 109,000 people. It's a big number, but it's a significant reduction to almost 2 times. In 2020, for the first time, we saw the migration inflow of 24,000 people. It's not a big number, but the fact of a change in trend is a serious achievement. What is of the most important to note, the young people started to go to the Far East from all over the country. Starting with 2015, for 9 years, we see the influx of young people aged 20 to 24. Last year only, it increased more than twice compared to the previous year. What does it mean? It means that here you can get an interesting profession, find a well-paid job, settle down, resolve housing issues, create family, bring up children. It is in the Far East where the future of our country is being created. Young people see and feel this clearly and react respectively. We will continue the development of the system of secondary and higher professional education in the region. We will constantly adjust it in accordance with the personnel requirements of the enterprises, take into account the labor market outlook with the development of new prospective areas of economy. It's been agreed to open university campuses in Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk and Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, in Yakutsk, in Khabarovsk, in Blagoveshchensk, Ulan-Ude, and Chita. We are going to build the second line of the Far Eastern Federal University campuses, world-level campuses in Murmansk and Arkhangelsk. We are going to create all the necessary conditions to obtain high-quality, up-to-date knowledge, and will create the conditions for that. It is important to support not only those who are going to move to the region, but also who were born here, who live here and work. Those who, with their own hands, makes the Far East and the entire Russia more successful. We need to achieve a steady improvement of the quality of life for the foresters and their families. The key task, the most important thing for the people to improve our economy is to resolve the issue of housing. For 10 years, in 10 years, the foresters should reach the higher level than average in Russian. For 22 foreign cities, we prepared master plans that include the tasks of the economic development and designed to create modern and comfortable environment for life, with the renovation of housing and communal infrastructure, development of public spaces, parks, boulevards, children and sporting grounds, with the modernization of the social area. Master plans are being implemented, and as of today, within the framework of the master plans, 160 objects have been commissioned, including we built embankments, children parks in Komsomolsk on Amur, Stadium on Ulan-Ude, and the shipyard was modernized. A public square was opened in Yakutsk. Construction of the local hospital was finished in Kamchatka. A lot depends on the cooperation locally, on how competently aspects of urban agglomerations management are taken into account, and it covers several municipalities. I would like to ask the government, together with the colleagues from the region, to test in the pilot mode the mechanisms of such cooperation in Vladivostok agglomeration, and then, based on the experience received by 2030, consolidate the mechanism in the regulatory framework. By the end of 2030, in the forest and Arctic master plans, we are to commission another 60 objects. For the creation of these objects, it is important to use advanced solutions for design and construction. To finance the master plans, we agreed to create within the national projects special sections devoted to the forest and the Arctic, and to send to the master plans 5% of the costs of the specialized state programs in the social area, infrastructure, and so on. I would like to ask the Ministry of Finance to pay attention that these decisions have been taken. Yes, there is a lot of work there. We need to be attentive to all the programs, but I would like to ask you to allocate 5% to these means and resolve the tasks of the region. During the last forum, I instructed to allocate a separate limit for the Treasury infrastructure loans for master plans of the cities of Forest and the Arctic up to 2030. For this means 100 billion rubles will be allocated for construction and renovation of the infrastructure. Such projects from the regions are being selected locally and started by the government. I would like to note that the resources are provided to the forested regions in addition to the existing instruments of the so-called infrastructure menu. These are the funds from the National Welfare Fund, infrastructure bond issue financing within the framework of the federal project modernization of municipal infrastructure and housing. All this is an important contribution for the development of housing construction in the forest, to increase the affordability of housing for families in the forest. In 2015, in the region, we commissioned 2.9 million square meters of housing, and the last year it was 4.7 million. The great role was played by the mechanism of the forest quarter with incentives for developers and the program of the Forest and Arctic mortgage with 2% interest that was designed for young families, families with children, participants of the program Forest and Arctic Hector. In accordance with this mortgage program, we provided 165,000 loans. We prolonged the program up to 2030 and included the participants of the special military operation, employees of defense industry, enterprises, doctors and workers from the educational area. Well, these there were certain age limits, but I would like to note that the ability to get the mortgage with 2% interest rate, this opportunity shall be given not only to the teachers, but to all workers of the educational and municipal educational facilities. I would like to ask the government to introduce certain changes in the regulatory basis. These are the money that even in today's conditions are possible to be allocated for these purposes. I would like to propose to use the mortgage of the Arctic and Far East not only for the primary but for the secondary market of the housing, but only in those cities where the high-rise buildings are not being constructed and where there are no offers from the developers. We need to take into account the year of the construction of the house when the housing is purchased with the mortgage. Please work on this issue. We have discussed this topic already, and this task shall be resolved with the loans and in accordance with the normative basis. The decision shall be taken immediately. The housing issue is one of the key issues to improve the demographic situation in the Far East. There is an increased payment when the third child is born in the family. It is not 450,000 rubles as everywhere in the country, but 1 million ruble. And it is justified. Altogether, it gives the results required. Young people started to go to the Far East. The first, this measure of support was introduced in Primorie and then in other 7 regions. When the third and other children are born in the families in the Far East, the number of these families increased to a quarter. The payment of 1 million rubles is sent to the repayment of the mortgage. I consider it reasonable to make this mortgage accessible for all families in the region that have 3 or more children. I would like to note that it shall be available for all families with more than 1 child, independently from the age of the parents. There was a limit, 35 years old, but now women give birth to children when they are older than 35, 40 and older. The more children we have, the better. Families in the Far East, families with children, shall have access to social facilities, polyclinics, kindergartens, schools and hospitals. In the Far East, in the remote areas and villages, an approach is needed when such facilities are being constructed by the businesses, by the strategic partner who is implementing large investment projects and have the large-scale production in this or that locality. I would like to remind that last year we agreed to create this mechanism, which is very convenient for businesses to be able to use their own funds to build social facilities and enterprises, and then transfer these constructions to the region, to the municipality, but with the compensation of their costs, with the compensation through the payment from the future taxes when the enterprise is in operation. I would like to pay the attention of the government that together with the corporation Velbreffe, the work shall be conducted. And this instrument shall be implemented widely using the resources of the budget provided for the investment tax credit, and actively use the Institute of Public-Private Partnership and Concessions. In this regard, I hope that the cooperation with VAP will be fruitful to further improve the Institute of Public-Private Partnerships and Concessions. I am talking about the improving of the model of financing in this area. We need to ensure transparency and general understanding of the conditions of private-public partnership with businesses in socially important projects. This is an easy mechanism. There is nothing difficult to understand here, and the load for the cover for the budget is not that big. Dear colleagues, the Far East of Russia, the Asia-Pacific region, is a territory of dynamic changes and rapid development. We need to maintain a high pace of positive change, improve the infrastructure of the national economy, improve technological capabilities, and to use more efficiently resources, production, logistic, and science potential that the Far Eastern regions have and the country in general has. For this, we need to actively test, widely introduce bold, innovative solutions in the regulatory framework, the conditions of operation of businesses in solving problems that define the quality of life of our citizens. These are the approaches that have been approved here in the Arctic and in the Far East. We will continue working on them, adjust them to the demands of the population and in accordance with the requirements of the businesses, in accordance with the national interests of Russia. In this work, the systematic comprehensive approach is important. The ability to look ahead, see the prospects, set big goals, and calculate plans to achieve them. That is why, by the results of the current forum, I'd like to give the instruction to the government to approve a long-term development strategy for the Far Eastern Federal District until 2036. I would like you to perform this work until the end of this year. There is a lot of work ahead here in the Far East, in the Arctic. And I would like to note, dear colleagues, that we are open for all who are ready to participate in this work. Thank you for your attention.